The morning began like any other, the hum of the office blending with the faint aroma of coffee. But within minutes, everything unraveled. A seemingly innocuous meeting turned into a stage for humiliation, orchestrated with precise cruelty. A report that I had spent weeks perfecting was dismissed in front of the team, my ideas ridiculed and twisted into a source of amusement. Laughter echoed around me, sharp and deliberate, while I stood still, a careful mask hiding the shock that surged beneath my calm exterior. It wasn't just embarrassment. It was a revelation. Faces I had trusted, alliances I had believed were steadfast, dissolved in a single moment. The betrayal was clear, and while the fire of vengeance flickered quietly inside me, I remained composed, calculating, my mind already charting the path ahead. Days passed, each carrying subtle barbs and tiny disruptions that others might dismiss as coincidence. A file misplaced, a project timeline shifted without explanation, casual comments that cut deeper than intended, all hints of a network working against me. My instincts sharpened. I began noting the patterns, the small, almost imperceptible ways they tried to destabilize me. Their overconfidence was their strength, and I realized their vulnerability. I played along, responding with courtesy and diligence, hiding the storm that churned behind my eyes. Every misstep they believed was unnoticed, only fueled my understanding. I was learning the limits of their arrogance, and the more they underestimated me, the clearer my path became. The pieces began to converge, a mosaic of deception laid bare before me. Names, conversations, and hidden agendas that had previously seemed trivial now revealed themselves as deliberate acts of betrayal. It wasn't just rivalry or envy. This was orchestrated sabotage, executed with precision. I recalled moments that, in retrospect, had been red flags. Smiles that didn't reach their eyes, empty praise masking contempt, the whispered conversations halting when I entered a room. The puzzle was complete. The stakes were higher than I had imagined, and my adversaries more cunning. But so was I. I moved with patience, letting their own schemes become the evidence I would wield. Silence became my ally. I observed every interaction, every sly remark and quiet maneuver, recording each detail with meticulous care. No confrontation, no overt reaction, only quiet accumulation. Each day added layers to my understanding, each act of betrayal a thread in the web I was weaving. They continued to flaunt their power, unaware that their arrogance painted a vivid trail straight to the truth. Every lie, every deceitful smile, every misstep was catalogued. I was patient because I understood that the perfect moment was never forced. It arrived when preparation and opportunity intersected seamlessly. And then it came, the first fatal mistake. One of them, blinded by overconfidence, certain of my ignorance, left a trail too obvious to ignore. A careless email, a boastful remark, a subtle shift in alliances revealed where the fractures lay. I did not move hastily. Instead, I positioned myself strategically, aligning circumstances so that their errors became undeniable evidence. Their arrogance, which had shielded them so far, now exposed them completely. Everything I had observed, every act of sabotage, would converge in a moment that they could neither anticipate nor escape. The plan unfolded with precision. I began inserting subtle manipulations, guiding events without revealing my hand. Contracts were adjusted, reputations subtly questioned, alliances influenced with quiet words. They stumbled into their own traps, unaware of the invisible hand directing their downfall. Each step I took was measured, deliberate, ensuring that when the final act arrived, it would be undeniable. And as their panic began to surface, I remained composed, the calm orchestrator of a reckoning they never saw coming. The shadows shifted unexpectedly, introducing allies I hadn't anticipated and motives I hadn't considered. A former rival, recognizing my quiet strength, offered assistance in ways I hadn't requested but could utilize. Secrets emerged that tangled the web further, complicating the narrative yet strengthening my position. I adapted without hesitation, turning unexpected developments into opportunities. The balance of power tipped irrevocably, but with each twist I stayed ahead, a silent conductor ensuring the symphony of revenge played perfectly. I chose the moment carefully. One by one, their lies unraveled in front of the very people whose trust they had manipulated. The evidence I had painstakingly gathered became undeniable, every deceit exposed with a precision that left no room for denial. Shock and disbelief painted their faces as their schemes crumbled, and the arrogance that had once shielded them offered no defense. I remained unshaken, revealing only what was necessary, allowing their own actions to speak their guilt aloud. The downfall was complete. Justice, long delayed, had arrived in full measure. When the dust settled, I was left standing not with bitterness, but with clarity and control. The office, once a battlefield of deceit, now recognized my authority and strategic intelligence. Those who had sought to undermine me were humbled, their positions diminished, their influence dissolved. Yet I did not gloat. The victory was silent, but absolute, an affirmation that patience and intellect outmatch impulsive cruelty every time. I moved forward, my focus clear, my strength undisputed, the past now a lesson woven into my resilience. In the quiet aftermath, I allowed myself a moment of reflection. Revenge had been a path not taken lightly, a careful orchestration of strategy, observation, and patience. The cost had been time, restraint, and the constant tension of walking among those who sought to harm me. Yet the satisfaction was profound, not in cruelty but in justice delivered with precision. I had faced betrayal, navigated its labyrinth, and emerged not only victorious, but wiser, stronger, and unshakable. The lesson was clear. Those who underestimate patience, strategy, and the calm resolve of the betrayed do so at their own peril. The first sign was subtle, almost imperceptible, a document misplaced, a detail omitted in a meeting that should have been routine. At first I chalked it up to human error, the chaos of deadlines and workloads, but the pattern emerged too quickly to ignore. The sabotage was deliberate, the mockery quiet but precise. I had trusted my colleagues, believed in a shared sense of purpose, yet here it was laid bare. Those I relied upon had begun undermining me in ways that left me exposed yet outwardly calm. Shock rippled beneath my composed exterior, but I did not react. Instead, I processed, cataloged, and stored each slight as fuel for a fire that would burn with deliberate intensity. The next weeks revealed a truth I had been too naive to see before. Credit for my ideas vanished into the pockets of those who smiled in my face. Projects I nurtured twisted into their own narratives. Small manipulations, whispers, and veiled comments illustrated a reality that had been hidden behind polite nods and congratulatory words. Colleagues and even some superiors had taken sides, and each subtle action was a dagger disguised as camaraderie. I realized the danger of underestimating them and the strength of patience. Observation became my tool, and silence my shield. As I measured every interaction with care, absorbing the depth of their deception. Humiliation became a companion I learned to wear with grace. Where others expected anger, they found composure. Where they expected confrontation, they found patience. I studied their patterns. Who flinched when watched, who took too long to cover a mistake, who thrived on arrogance rather than merit. Every action, every smile, every sidelong glance revealed a story they believed was hidden from me. I internalized their betrayals, transforming indignation into calculated awareness. With each passing day, the map of their deceit became clearer, and I became the silent observer in a game where the stakes were higher than anyone had admitted. Connecting the dots revealed a tapestry of favoritism and scheming far more intricate than I had imagined. Minor sabotages, subtle promotions, and quiet disparagement formed a pattern that exposed their vulnerabilities and their overconfidence. The more I watched, the more I understood that they had been careless, blinded by the assumption that I lacked the awareness or resilience to respond. I saw the arrogance that would be their undoing, the mistakes that, once compiled and exposed, would leave them powerless. Knowledge became my armor, patience my weapon, and strategy the language of every thought I entertained. Arrogance, I realized, was their greatest weakness. They moved with blind confidence, assuming that proximity to power protected them from scrutiny. Their over-reliance on manipulation left gaps, cracks through which I could see clearly. A careless comment, a boastful misstatement, a misjudged reaction. All of it became evidence in the architecture of my eventual response. They revealed themselves in ways they never intended, and every revealing act was meticulously noted, cataloged, and filed in the recesses of my mind. I did not act hastily. Their confidence was a gift I intended to exploit fully. Silence became strategy. Each interaction, each exchange, was an opportunity to refine the response that would eventually topple them. I maintained a composed exterior, smiled when required, nodded when praised, while inwardly charting a plan that was subtle, precise, and entirely calculated. My patience was deliberate, every move measured. I had learned that vengeance executed too early is wasteful, but patience is power. In the quiet, I orchestrated the counterbalance, ensuring that when the time came, the impact would be undeniable. Alliances and loyalties revealed themselves in whispers and glances. Colleagues who had seemed indifferent offered unexpected insight, while those who wore friendship as a mask betrayed their true colors in fleeting moments of indiscretion. Each interaction became a test, each observation a clue. The network around me, once chaotic and threatening, slowly revealed its structure. I adapted, learning who could be trusted, who could be leveraged, and who would inadvertently aid in their own unraveling. The shadows of suspicion deepened the tension, yet I remained the calm center, the quiet force around which the storm would later form. Retaliation began not as impulse, but as a deliberate construct in my mind. Each slight, each insult, each act of betrayal became a variable in a complex equation of justice. I imagined scenarios, calculated outcomes, and rehearsed possibilities with precision. Frustration, once raw and consuming, transformed into focus, and focus into a meticulous plan. There was no rush, no need for theatrics. Every thought of revenge took root with patience, nurtured by strategy and strengthened by the observation of those who had underestimated me. This was not vengeance born of anger. It was intelligence made manifest. The exterior I presented was flawless. I continued to cooperate, to contribute, to appear compliant, all the while guiding events and shaping perceptions with quiet mastery. Every suggestion I made, every approval I offered, carried an undercurrent of subtle influence. They believed they remained in control, that I was content to follow the rules they set. But beneath the calm facade, my plan crystallized with clarity. They were unwitting participants in a narrative that would soon pivot entirely in my favor, and they did not suspect a thing. In quiet moments, I envisioned the reversal of roles, the inevitable justice that awaited. I imagined the smug faces brought low, the arrogance dismantled piece by piece. Each scenario was vivid, precise, and entirely achievable. The future I constructed in my mind was one where their schemes collapsed under the weight of their own hubris, and where my patience and intelligence were rewarded in full measure. It was not fantasy, it was strategy. And with every passing day, the path to that future became clearer, the inevitability of their downfall more certain. By the time the first opportunity arrived, I was ready. Each detail had been anticipated, each reaction predicted, each misstep recorded. As I reflected quietly, I made a silent vow that would shape every decision from that moment onward. If they thought I was finished, they had only just written the prologue to my story. The game had been set, the pieces in place, and the final act waiting patiently in the wings. Every betrayal they had committed, every slight they had delivered, had been transformed into fuel for a reckoning that would be precise, devastating, and entirely justified. The prologue was over. The story was just beginning. Every word, every glance, every small act of dismissiveness became part of a ledger I kept silently in my mind. Emails left unanswered, credit stolen, whispered jokes at my expense. I cataloged each one meticulously, not out of anger, but with precision. Each slight was a brushstroke in a larger portrait of deceit, every insult a thread in the fabric of a plan forming quietly behind a composed exterior. They had no idea I noticed. They had no idea I was building the case that would soon unravel everything they thought untouchable. The memories returned unbidden, sharp and vivid. Times I had trusted them blindly, advice ignored, boundaries crossed and dismissed as trivial. Each moment now carried weight. I saw the patterns clearly. Arrogance, opportunism, a sense of invincibility that had blinded them to consequence. Every betrayal in the past had been a warning, ignored at the time, but now invaluable. These recollections were not for dwelling. They were for understanding the depth of their hubris and the inevitability of the reckoning I would deliver. A voice from long ago whispered in my mind, the words of a mentor I had once disregarded. "Pride blinds the clever," they had said. I remembered the caution, the stories shared about others like them who believed their cleverness shielded them from consequence. Now, each word resonated with newfound clarity. Their overconfidence was not strength, it was vulnerability. And I, armed with patience, observation, and strategy, would ensure that every misstep was recorded, every lapse noted, and every arrogance exposed. Small victories accumulated quietly. I anticipated the next move in meetings, offered solutions before problems grew, and presented my work with quiet excellence. Successes I did not broadcast, achievements that drew no fanfare, but each one chipped away at the illusion that they were untouchable. I did not rush. I let them assume superiority while I built momentum unseen. In the shadows, I outperformed, each subtle win feeding the foundation of a larger plan, invisible to their haughty eyes. Their arrogance became a shield and a target simultaneously. They flaunted accomplishments, derided minor oversights on my part, and spoke as if their judgment were unquestionable. I watched, calm and silent, recording every misstep, every overextended boast. They believed their confidence masked competence, but their blind pride left openings. Their victories, loud and careless, were the cracks I needed to exploit, the signs that their downfall could be orchestrated without haste or exposure. And the cracks appeared, small but telling. Mistimed decisions, overlooked details, and minor blunders painted a clear map of vulnerability. I saw the patterns of weakness, traced them to recurring habits, and began shaping strategies around these flaws. Every error was a clue, every oversight a tool I could manipulate. They were so certain of their supremacy that they revealed themselves without knowing. The blueprint for their undoing was constructing itself in plain sight, and I had only to follow the lines with precision. Patience became my constant companion. Every observation, every silent recording of their missteps became preparation. I calibrated my actions to the rhythm of their own overconfidence, making every move count and every interaction serve a future purpose. The calm before the strike was a mantle I wore easily, masking intention behind cordiality and quiet diligence. Each day added to the strategy, each interaction reinforcing the inevitability of their undoing. I did not act impulsively. Timing was everything. I envisioned the climax in exacting detail. The moment when I would step forward and outmaneuver them completely, leaving no room for defense or denial, was becoming increasingly vivid. Every possible reaction had been anticipated, every countermeasure accounted for. Victory was no longer a hope. It was a blueprint etched in my mind. The tension of waiting only sharpened my resolve, transforming patience into a weapon that would strike with absolute precision. They moved through the office believing themselves untouchable, confident that I would falter, that my quiet demeanor was a sign of weakness. They did not see the storm coalescing around them, each misstep leading them deeper into the trap I had designed. Every word they spoke, every laugh they shared at my expense was a step closer to their unraveling. They were so certain, so sure of their invincibility. Yet every move they made had been anticipated, every flaw accounted for. And as I watched, I knew the time to act was near. The game was theirs in appearance only, but in truth, the board was entirely mine. Their confidence had always been their shield, but pride can be brittle when wielded recklessly. A public presentation, meant to showcase their mastery, became the stage for their overreach. Words flubbed, facts misstated, and arrogance exposed in the smallest but most damning of details. The audience, once quietly compliant, shifted uneasily, sensing the crack in the armor they had assumed impenetrable. I observed with a calm I had perfected over months, noting the exact moment their certainty became their vulnerability. Their misstep was both small and enormous, a single point of failure that carried the weight of every past slight they had inflicted. The trap was now primed, and I could move without haste. The opportunity revealed itself like a gift disguised as chaos. In the aftermath of their error, they became careless, attempting to recover with forced charm and overconfident explanations. Every exaggeration, every deflection, left traces of their hubris visible to anyone willing to see, and I was more than willing. The opening was subtle. A missed deadline, an overlooked report, an exaggeration repeated to the wrong audience. But it was perfect. It provided the leverage I had spent months cultivating, the chance to turn every slight, every deception, into a weapon calibrated to expose them completely. Months of patient observation and meticulous documentation now converged. Every email, every whispered comment, every instance of stolen credit aligned like pieces of a puzzle I had been assembling silently. The documents I had quietly gathered, the inconsistencies I had recorded, the patterns I had traced, all now connected to the mistake that had undone their confidence. Their arrogance had handed me the key, and I had built the door. Each component of my plan moved into position with precision, the long game finally accelerating toward its inevitable conclusion. Nothing was left to chance. Every detail had been anticipated, every reaction predicted. The tension tightened like a drawn wire. They continued to move with bluster, oblivious to the net closing around them. Subtle manipulations I had planted months earlier began to interact perfectly with their current misstep. Every misjudgment they made nudged them further toward the precipice, every overconfident gesture feeding the momentum of their collapse. I remained composed, allowing the trap to shape itself around their arrogance, each calculated action ensuring that when the final moment arrived, resistance would be impossible. They were blind to the inevitability closing in with each heartbeat. I struck silently, with no overt flourish or unnecessary confrontation. Every subtle maneuver, every whispered correction and carefully timed revelation chipped away at their foundation. Their own miscalculations did most of the work. I needed only to guide, to nudge, to allow consequence to unfold naturally while maintaining perfect control. The beauty of this approach was its inevitability. Their pride accelerated their undoing, and I, patient and precise, needed only to remain steady, letting the world witness their unraveling without my hand appearing heavy in the work. Suspense built as the repercussions of their misstep rippled outward. Colleagues whispered, superiors questioned, and the minor cracks of doubt began to widen into canyons of uncertainty. Every carefully timed intervention I had set into motion interacted with their errors, compounding the consequences. It was a quiet crescendo of inevitability. The anticipation was almost tangible. I observed the patterns I had cultivated for months, converging into a single, undeniable reality. The collapse was not only coming, it was inevitable. Every observer, every participant, could now sense that the carefully maintained illusion of competence was disintegrating. It only took one misstep, one careless word, and everything they believed would protect them collapsed. The carefully constructed facade crumbled under the weight of arrogance and overconfidence. All the subtle manipulations, the documented evidence, the past slights, and the months of strategic patience converged in a single moment that left them powerless and exposed. The world they had assumed untouchable was now laid bare, and every person who had been fooled by their charm saw the truth. They had been outplayed completely, their hubris the architect of their own downfall, and I had guided the final piece into place with unerring precision. The reckoning was complete, silent yet absolute, and the victory had been mine from the start. The moment had arrived with perfect timing, as if the universe itself had conspired to hand me the stage I had long envisioned. Months of silent observation, patient documentation, and carefully measured maneuvers culminated in this instant. My talent, my vision, my work, everything I had cultivated was showcased publicly, undeniable and brilliant. The audience's attention shifted entirely toward me, their murmurs of admiration spilling into the open. Every subtle idea I had nurtured, every clever adaptation I had hidden until the right moment, now gleamed under the scrutiny of peers, superiors, and rivals alike. Across the room, their face paled. The antagonist, once brimming with unshakable confidence, froze, blindsided by the very skill they had dismissed and underestimated. Shock replaced arrogance as they realized the miscalculation that had led to this exposure. They had assumed incompetence, doubted my commitment, and relied on their habitual underestimation to shield them from scrutiny. But here I stood, composed, every detail flawless, every point strategically placed to reveal not just capability, but superiority. Their mouth opened, words stumbling in panic, trying to explain, to redirect, to reclaim authority. Yet the moment had passed them by. Their misjudgment, once invisible, now gleamed for all to see, leaving them powerless before a crowd that could no longer ignore the truth. As the realization sank in, the antagonist's attempts at salvage only amplified their humiliation. Each defensive comment, each desperate correction, became evidence of failure, exposing their arrogance, their mismanagement, their miscalculations. I had anticipated their moves, predicted their reaction, and in every failed effort to cover their missteps, they confirmed the very patterns I had quietly recorded. Triumph had become tangible, almost palpable. The contrast between my composure and their flailing revealed a simple truth. Skill, preparation, and patience could overcome deceit and arrogance every time. Through it all, I remained quiet, serene, a composed observer of the chaos my strategy had wrought. There was no gloating, no overt celebration, only the satisfaction of being right, of seeing justice unfold with precision. The antagonists' faltering, their humiliation, served as a mirror reflecting everything they had underestimated. I allowed their mistakes to speak for themselves, letting intelligence, planning, and composure shine without interference. My quiet triumph carried the weight of all the months of careful calculation, and it was more satisfying than any shouted victory could ever be. Consequences followed swiftly and inevitably. Their social credibility faltered, their professional influence waned, and the very networks they had relied upon now regarded them with doubt and skepticism. Opportunities slipped through their grasp as the ripple effect of exposure spread farther than they could have imagined. Every action, every moment of arrogance that had once elevated them became a liability, a testament to the reckoning that had finally arrived. Justice, in its most poetic form, had been delivered, not through malice, but through strategy, foresight, and unwavering patience. And in the stillness that followed, I allowed myself a private moment of quiet satisfaction. Faces that had once mocked and dismissed me now reflected disbelief and astonishment, frozen in recognition of their misjudgment. I smiled, not with triumph over others, but with the serene awareness that I had orchestrated the inevitable, that my patience, intelligence, and integrity had outlasted arrogance and deceit. At last, they understood what they had underestimated, and I moved forward unshaken, untouchable, and undeniably victorious. The room buzzed with murmurs, but all eyes gradually fixed on the unfolding truth. Every lie, every slight, every miscalculated move the antagonist had believed would remain hidden now lay bare, exposing the full weight of their arrogance. Colleagues whispered, clients reconsidered, and friends glanced sideways, unable to reconcile the confidence they once admired with the humbling reality of failure. Their carefully constructed facade crumbled in real time, leaving nothing but the echo of misjudgments and neglected warnings. Every public acknowledgement, every professional opportunity they had taken for granted, slipped like sand through fingers, highlighting the breadth of their missteps in a way that could not be ignored or repaired. Amid the chaos, I remained steady, untouched by the commotion that swallowed them. My composure was a shield, forged through months of patience, careful observation, and calculated maneuvers. While they fumbled and faltered, revealing weakness in every gesture and misstatement, I observed quietly, knowing that the strength of silence often speaks louder than words. Every detail I had anticipated unfolded exactly as planned, reinforcing the meticulous nature of preparation and the quiet potency of intelligence. There was no need for confrontation. The consequences were manifest, and my restraint amplified the impact. Recognition arrived subtly but unmistakably. Opportunities began to shift in my favor. Accolades reached me without pretense, and colleagues who had once underestimated my presence now deferred with respect. Confidence, earned through intellect and strategy rather than reckless aggression, became a steady companion. My success did not roar. It persisted with quiet, undeniable authority, a testament to the power of foresight and calculated patience. Each achievement reflected not only skill, but the deliberate orchestration of circumstances that had long gone unnoticed by those blinded by arrogance. The antagonist's downfall served as a vivid lesson. Cruelty, arrogance, and impatience always falter before precision. Intelligence and restraint, their failures were self-inflicted, their hubris the very trap that ensnared them. I did not need to celebrate. The lesson was evident in the echoes of their misjudgment, in the reconsidered trust of peers, and in the subtle acknowledgement of skill that now accompanied my every step. Vindication required no spectacle. It had been earned silently, brilliantly, and irrevocably. They said I'd never make it, but I didn't just make it. I made them realize that intelligence always outshines cruelty. The words were mine only in thought, yet they carried the resonance of truth through every consequence, every whispered recognition, and every quiet victory. The journey of patience, strategy, and perseverance had reached its inevitable and deeply satisfying conclusion.